Welcome everyone to our technical session on utility success stories. I'm Jed Drolet with Alaska Energy Authority. I work in our community outreach and regional energy planning, and we work with a lot of the smaller communities, smaller utilities. Part of the reason we put this session together is that when you talk about rural Alaska and energy in rural Alaska, you often get a lot of attention to the communities that are having problems, where there's a lot of major issues, needs, and we'd spend a lot of our time trying to figure out how to meet those needs with increasingly limited resources. But we want to share that there really are a lot of success stories out there, and that there are communities that are managing their own energy system successfully, that there are projects that are being implemented successfully, lowering costs, increasing energy reliability, those sorts of things. I wanted to share some of those examples, and particularly for communities in rural Alaska, to see some examples of things that have been done and can be done, to give you a sense of what might be possible for your own communities as well. One last minute change. We had 3 speakers on our agenda, but one of our speakers, Romy from Newtok, had to cancel at the last minute. He wasn't able to attend the conference. So we're just going to have the 2, Nathan Hill and Mariano Floresta. So we'll just go ahead and move into our first presentation. Nathan Hill is the manager of the Lake and Penn Borough, and he's going to be sharing examples of some of the success stories in his area.
Good morning. Everybody hear me okay? Well, there's the first success story I should talk about is actually getting the presentation up on the screen. I was a bit late on getting that in, and the internet bandwidth is a little slow here, so we got it, and I'm supposed to be able to push this button, right? Houston. So the original plan was, if this didn't work, I was gonna go, or every time we needed it. Okay, so, but there's like 40 slides, so I'll be getting my exercise if this doesn't work. Full screen. Okay, well that's the start. All right, thank you. Okay. Can I go backwards? Okay. Okay. Well, the title of the session here is the success stories. Lake and Peninsula Borough, we're comprised of a landmass approximately the size of West Virginia. It's about 400 miles of coastline between Lake Clark and the Chigniks. Ivanov Bay is at about the southernmost point. Under 2,000 people generally. I think there's, of course, been a decline like other places in rural Alaska. But we have a fairly successful school system, and it seems like we're not ready to throw in the towel by any stretch of the imagination. We focus a lot of time, and we commit a lot of our energy to reducing the cost of living in the villages that we manage. I've been the manager for 3 years for the borough, and in that time, and prior to the time I was manager, we've had a study or a project in every single one of our communities, and Alaska Energy Authority has been a big part of that. Alternative energy projects. The projects have been successful for the most part. We've had a wind study or water study or some study, as I said, in every community, and we've gotten some pretty major projects off the ground. Just to give you a visual, Lake and Penn Borough is the peninsula, of course, and they're not really showing up here on the screen, but there's both hydro, wind. Can you see that from out there? There's actually, I think there's supposed to be little wind turbines by some of these, by all of them basically. But at any rate, that's kind of the geography and the communities within the borough. So one of the major hydro projects that we have supplies 3 communities with electricity, and they're 95+% renewable. They fire their generators up. I think they burned 2,000 gallons of fuel to power Iliamna, New Halen, and Non-Dalton. These are some of the figures of state funding. Recently, there was some increased capacity measures that went in, and it's a very successful project that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but it should. It's an important project, and we're looking to potentially expand it and turn some of the electricity into heat. But that'll take some water diversion, and the funding is not there right now. But it's a successful project, and that you guys are all experts on that already. We don't need to look at that. But so there are 2 750 kilowatt. A grand total of 750 kilowatts, and it's been in operation since '96. There was some time when the system wasn't running too efficiently, but in the recent 5 to 8 years, the management there has done an outstanding job of dialing things in and getting it to perform up to the standards that it can, and it's also a source of heat for schools and I think a couple of other buildings in New Halen and Iliamna. When there's extra power, there's interruptible power that's sold at a cheaper rate and saves some folks, including the school district, some heating fuel costs. That's the Tizimna waterfall that it comes down. It's a pretty good drop, and produces electricity for 3 communities. We also have studied and done some biomass, and one of the projects that AEA funded in Kakanok was a large wood-fired boiler that heats 2 community buildings. We ended up, I think, on that project, these numbers aren't exactly symbolic of the costs. It was less than that. It was under $200,000 to install the boiler in Kakanok, and that's what it looked like. It's a Connex with some wood storage space and a Garn boiler in it. This is the unit heater inside of one of the buildings that gets heated in Kakanok, and it's significantly reduced the fuel consumption for the tribal office and the community building there in the thousands of gallons a year. So another successful project. We are still interested in more biomass. Oh, I'm out of line here. Wind is another one. As I said, we've done a study or a project in every one of our communities. Right now, Kakanok Village, they are in a situation where the wind turbines were installed a few years ago, and it was actually 2010, and we're working on finding a way to get the wind turbines up to medium penetration. The original goal was high penetration, but that is a lofty goal. But at this time, we have some, I think it's round 6 funding. Thank you, Connie. And we're putting a plan together to get the turbines up and running again. So we're at work on that. Bulk fuel. You go to any village and go to the fuel farm in that village, and it's probably got AEA placard, a name, some work or investment from AEA on it. I think I've got a map here showing the communities that we've had completed. And there's some highlights in that. And maybe once in a while I'll like do that so I don't put you to sleep. And I make somebody happy in the back of the room. So, was that good? Okay. So, as you can see, a lot of work done. In this past year in particular, Port Haydn was in a situation, just examples, I'll be flipping through pictures, just be entertained. The Port Haydn was in a crisis. They had a fuel header that was just about in the drink. They had to cut their fuel header back. And I think I've got some pictures of that. I'm going to search for that here quickly. All right, maybe I don't. However, we were planning on moving the tank farm maybe next year. And the erosion was occurring so quickly that it had to be done earlier. So AEA again stepped up and made sure the funding was in place and came out and helped move the tank farm for Port Haydn. And it was a pretty critical project. Environmentally speaking, it was getting pretty close to disastrous. So again, that's the standard tank farm in the villages out there. It's a big piece of how we reduce costs and keep people supplied with fuel. Power system upgrades. I'm not going to focus too heavily on some of these things. I want to highlight some of the bigger projects, but power system upgrades, of course, that's a necessity. Of course, there's training and other things that a lot of our villages are in touch with the staff at AEA on, and there, as you can see, is a lot of action out there on upgrades and upgrades in progress. Perryville, they had an upgrade. They are integrating alternatives into their system. And so, not to get too far into the weeds on the technical side of it, but they had everything coming in on one phase. And long story short, this is helping make their alternatives work better in their community. And it's a benefit. This is another upgrade, Pilot Point. Igigik, they're very clean, well-functioning projects. Okay, here's the pictures I was thinking about. A particular town, Port Haydn. Now there are some communities that have higher needs, or maybe they're a little more proactive or aggressive about hunting down help and funding. But if you look at a community like Port Haydn, they've gotten, since 2002, a large number of projects and funding out of the state, and it's definitely a bonus for them. So I think there's a couple of pictures of this is Port Haydn, the wind study we did out there. And looks like there was a bunch of caribou in the background there. Anyway, I hunt caribou, so that's Port Haydn emergency generator. This is the fuel farm upgrade. I think there's an action picture here. That's what I was referring to earlier. It was mighty close to being in the drink, and they lost up to, I think, 100 feet in a year, and it was closer than that. So all it would have taken was, I think they were within 40 feet of the ocean, and one more storm event could have put them over the threshold and into the water. So that is now the relocated fuel farm, and we're very happy that that was able to get done this year. Chignik Lagoon, another great success story. We've done a number of tasks out there, but I want to focus, of course, on the most exciting one, and that's the hydro, Packers Creek Hydro. It doesn't take a very big creek or river to produce power if you've got some good drop, and I think most of this project was building a road to the site. This was, I think they broke ground, it was 2014, and by 2015 they were producing power. But it's a very clean, it's a beautiful site. The community has given us feedback. We don't hear loud diesel engines, we don't smell the smells, we hear the birds. And you go to the generator house, and this is providing 175 kilowatts of power, and it's keeping the diesels off. This is the spillway. This is the intake going into the generator house. You can have this is of course the intake going into the turbine to actually spin the generator, but very simple, not a lot of moving parts, but successful in providing the whole community with power. And you can stand in this powerhouse and have a normal everyday conversation without raising your voice. So you grease the bearings once or twice a month. It's just, it's a great project. So we're really happy with that. And I think they've got some learning curves. They've had the system shut off from time to time and had their diesels on, but over time that learning curve will lessen, and I think they're going to have a high percentage. I would guess 80 to 90% renewable there. So substantial reduction in diesel fuel intake, and there's some numbers there. They were burning 100 to 120 gallons a day, and you're looking at in that community probably $5 a gallon. So $500 a day, that's good. And the thing that impresses me about that, I mean, you look at the trickle of water that's coming out of there, and it's really not. It doesn't take a lot if you've got the right conditions. So 175 kilowatts. Igiagik, that's another community, of course, we've heard about a lot in the alternative energy world. They are kind of the poster child, I would say, for a lack of better term. They've done a lot of work, and they've had a lot of help from AEA. This is a wood boiler that we installed, the Borough. We received funding from AEA, but the funding could only be spent on wood-fired boilers that met certain emission standards, but Igiagik really didn't need a very big wood-fired boiler, and so the Borough kind of paid out of pocket for this one. And we've had conversations with the Alaska Energy Authority team that takes care of biomass about how we could make this more efficient. So we're kind of learning along with AEA. If we were, basically this doesn't burn hot enough and it lets a lot of smoke out, and so how do you advance that system and make it more efficient and better with the air quality. So this is a quote from the president, Alexandra. She said it doesn't save the council money, but it basically pays local people to go out and get the resources. And that's really I think on the wood-fired boiler end of things where I see success is in a small village where you have very limited economy and very limited access to jobs. You start paying $300 or $400 for a cord of wood. And over in Kakanok, I was actually the administrator there when the wood-fired boiler went in, and we put a sign up that said $300 a cord, and I had to tell the local guys to quit because this pile of wood grew so fast, and everyone in the community was excited about going and hauling wood, and we weren't putting money into Crowley's bank account, we were putting money into the back pockets of local people who had the skill set to get the biomass to fuel the boiler for the village. So it's more than just heating a building. You know, there's social implications and things that happen alongside of these projects that really do make a difference in these small communities. Again, this is Igiagik. You may have, there was a presentation here next door. They've implemented the pilot program with this in-river experimental RivGen project. I think they were displacing about a third of the demand of the village, and this was put in place to prove that the mechanics and the interworkings wasn't going to fillet fish as they swam up the river, and it proved successful. So they are going to be in doing more of this, and I think making this a permanent thing in Igiagik. So they're again, if you want to look at a community that's doing a lot and is being very proactive about alternatives and reducing reliance on dinosaur juice, Igiagik. More of the same. Capital cost, of course, isn't cheap, but if we don't start thinking about doing things differently, we will continue to be slaves to fossil fuels. So Igiagik, again, the upgrades, upgrade the power plant, and a fueling station. More Igiagik efficiencies work. They've had many improvements. So part of Lake and Penn Borough's approach to all of this is we're not a top-down government. We don't try to bring projects to villages that don't ask us for projects. So community ownership is big. You have to have buy-in. You need to make sure the capacity is there in the village, and if the community has that desire, that's the place where it's going to happen. So we work with our communities, and we try to help with the capacity end of things. If they're lacking capacity in grant writing, if we need help with management of fundings, we do that. We also put skin in the game. We're not approaching the state with, I don't think, any of these projects with our hand out or both hands out and saying, give us the money. We almost always have a good match in the project, and so that makes us more accountable. It's our money and the state's money, and we're working together with the village to make these things happen, and so it puts ownership on everyone, and that's also key. The bottom line, we cooperate with AEA. That's probably another important part. We build relationships, and you know, there's always, with funding and projects and politics, times when things aren't easy, but you got to keep your eye on the prize. And I guess that kind of concludes my presentation. I've got the contact information here for the folks at Alaska Energy Authority. If you'd like my information, or if you have questions for me, I don't know if we're waiting till the end of the, okay, we'll wait till the end of the session here to have questions, but here's the information, and if that's not enough, this is what they look like. You can go and find any one of these people and talk to them. So that's all I have. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.
Thanks, Nathan. And yes, I think most of the people in that picture are actually at the conference. So if you see us, come talk to us if you have interest in our programs at AEA. So thanks, Nathan. And now we'll have our next speaker, and we will hold questions for the end. Mariano Floresta from Clark's Point. He's the community liaison for Bristol Bay Economic Development Corporation there, and he's also just kind of the all-around get-it-done guy in Clark's Point. And he'll be talking about that community's experience with getting their energy systems in shape. Thanks.
Hello. I don't do so well freelancing, so I've written everything down on paper. So this little clicker, which button you put on here? This one. It's okay. Okay, you can hear me okay. Hello, my name is Mariano Floresta, and I'm very happy to be speaking at the 2016 Rural Energy Conference. I was born in Dillingham, Alaska. I've lived in Clarks Point all my life. Being the youngest of 6, I grew up set netting for salmon on the Clarks Point beach with my family. Along with fishing in the summer, I started working construction in 1994 and now work as a liaison for Bristol Bay Economic Development. I also serve as vice mayor for the city of Clarks Point, a member on the Nushagak Advisory Committee, and the Diasic Walrus Commission. It switched. Back in the early 1900s, salmon fishing in Bristol Bay drew people in from all over the world. Like many other communities along the Alaska coast, Clarks Point thrived as one of the canneries that processed canned salmon. Along with technology, the sailboats were replaced by engine-powered boats, and the canneries were replaced by floating processors. For years, Alaska Packers Association operated the cannery in Clarks Point, and I can remember when I was growing up as a kid seeing all the many changes in the fishing industry. Trident Seafood operated the Clarks Point cannery until they shut down in 2002. Along with salmon, there are many subsistence activities that the residents still rely on to this day. Like many other communities that had their schools shut down, Clarks Point's population was drastically affected when our school closed down. With the decline in population, the city had financial difficulties in paying its bulk fuel loan with the state of Alaska. Residents were charged $150 flat rate each month regardless on how much electricity they used. So it was cheaper to use electrical heaters than to buy heating fuel. Along with the help of the Alaska Energy Authority, Del Conrad, with Rural Alaska Services, assisted Clarks Point in transitioning the electrical utilities management from the city to the tribe to become eligible for the bulk fuel loan program with the state. Del also suggested installing amping meters from Marsh Creek in the homes of the residents to start collecting revenue. Amping meters work like a credit card, but for electricity. You charge your card at your utility provider, and once electricity is used up, your power shuts off and you need to go purchase more electricity. So, along with the help of funding from Bristol Bay Economic Development, the amping meters were installed, and we immediately seen a change in electric usage. Residents quit using electric heaters, electric hot water heaters, and clotheslines started going up to avoid using electric dryers. With the help of Alaska Energy Authority, proper data that the Regulatory Commission of Alaska requested, Clarks Point was able to qualify for PCE. 7. Over here. Along with the future Along with future power line upgrades, Clarks Point is working with AEA on upgrading our powerhouse and is currently developing a conceptual design report. We would also like to integrate 7 SkyStream wind turbines that we acquired with BBDC funding. I think we just finished that one. So one more, I think. Yeah. Okay. This is real short. This is my last. In conclusion, Clarks Point would like to thank everyone who helped in making our community a better place to live. Hopefully, this impact will encourage our population to grow. So if you're looking for an upcoming place to live, you're more than welcome to move to Clarks Point. Thank you for your attention. One more slide. There's a list of people we like to thank. Oh, I did something.
Thanks, Mariano. And as I said before, Romy Cadiente from Newtok, who was going to be our third speaker, unfortunately was not able to attend. So we have a little extra time here. I think we'll open up for any questions you might have for either of our panelists. Yes.
No, we're working with Alaska Energy Authority right now, and they're on the conceptual design report, and we're hoping that we can integrate the wind turbines with new generators, or we can figure out a way to integrate them with our old ones if that doesn't happen this year.
I've got one of those and it works great. I've had it for a little over 5 years. It produced a little over 22,000 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, these are the same ones that what was that? Perryville got. I think they got 10 of them.
I've got one the same thing as very well. It's 2.4.
Yeah.
You've got a bigger model. It's probably a little better.
Yeah, this is integration part that we're working on now, and we've got, we've got some line loss that we're working on. We're getting coastal contractors to come down and install new transformers, new power lines where they're broke, and cut all the dead houses off, because even if the line goes to a house and nobody's staying there, then you still got line loss. So.
Great. Other questions? Yeah, Del?
Thank you. Mariano, how difficult was it to get the folks in the community to switch from that flat rate to a kilowatt hour charge? Was that a big battle, or is it basically successful now? Everybody's bought in?
Well, when we had that flat rate, like I said, everybody was using as much electricity as they could. And, 3-4 heaters in the house. And so once we went to the ampemeters, that just, everything changed. Even if you turn on your dryer, it was like a big spike in your electrical bill. I mean, it was like you either burn $7 a day or you're burning $70 a day. So people really started watching their electrical usage. But it wasn't hard. Of course there was people that, there's always going to be people that gripe about it. But as far as, what everybody did, they were happy for it.
Jackie?
Did you guys install the energy detective readers so that people were aware of what the spikes were in their electrical use in the homes?
Excuse me, I couldn't quite hear that.
Do you want the mic? Sure. Did you use any they're called TED meters or the energy detective meters where it shows the electrical use and the spikes when you say you turn on your dryer? Did you use anything like that to help keep the consumers aware of what their electrical use was?
So we started out at 37 cents a kilowatt hour, then we jumped up to 57 cents on the first month, just to get them used to it. And after the first month, we went from 57 cents to $1. And if they broke 500 kilowatt hours, 500 kilowatt hours, and it would jump up to $1. So that was a warning point. Once you reach 500 kilowatt, then you're jumping up to from 57 cents to $1. Oh. Sorry.
Add something to that. When we installed the prepaid meters, we did demonstrate to people. Yeah, we turn everything off in the house and then say, okay, now see what the background usage is. Now go turn your electric dryer on and watch it jump up to $1.20 from 7 cents. And then turn that off and now let's turn your water heater on. And we figured out which appliances were the problems.
They work really well. I mean, you either, and one thing that was good about it is, like we work Monday through Friday, and if you ran out of electricity on the weekend, then your power wouldn't shut off until 9 a.m. Monday morning. And then whatever you used over the weekend, that was going to get charged to your card. And so, you know, that way we wouldn't have to, people wouldn't have electricity, you know, no electricity over the weekend. And they're tamper-proof too, so if they try to jimmy-rig it, you know, it automatically shuts off, so.
This is great to keep hearing about the AMPI meters. Can you explain a little bit about the billing interface and how that's managed within the village? And by billing interface, I mean, are people paying for their bills by walking up to a central place and paying it? And what happens if they have a question about the AMPI meter and how much they've been charged?
Okay, so when we first installed it, we had a meeting, and all the residents were invited, and we explained to them exactly what they did. And as far as the getting electricity, then a lot of people would, you know, monitor their usage and, you know, keep checking it. But there's a lot of times people come in and they say, hey, you know, we're totally like out of electricity. And some people would actually sit in their house and, you know, I get a phone call. They say, hey, what's wrong with the generator? And I said, my lights are on. And, you know, just getting used to the transition of using that little card to go buy electricity.
I think Connie might be able to say a little more about how the system works.
Yeah, people do go to the tribal office or wherever the utility office is, and that's where they pay to put more money on their card. And the utility office can set limited hours if they choose to. They can be open from 10 until 2, and we make a friendly non-disconnect so that if it's outside of those hours when they're actively taking money, your power won't shut off. But the next day, 15 minutes after that office opens, your power goes off. And so then you can go get more power. In bigger cities in the lower 48 where they have these, they have kiosks at grocery stores where you can come in and purchase power, but that's an expensive prospect for small villages, so we don't have those.
Other questions? Right here.
I'd like to comment on that. I live in Igiagik, and we since put in a gas pump that we have to either buy, like Mariano suggested, we instead of electricity we buy put credit on a gas card, so then you can go get, or it also uses a credit card, so you don't want to buy credit on your gas card. You can use a credit card for the gas pump, and reason why we did this is just like some of the other villages is some people were getting too far behind on their bills, and yet they were spending money on non-essentials or even going to Anchorage when they get their dividend. So our village council and some of the other village councils decided that, you know, they're the governing body that operates the village and the power plants and everything else in the village. So, you know, the leaders have to do something. So we decided to do this system that we have to prepay, and then the utilities are, you know, collecting for what power we're selling. Otherwise, it makes it a lot simpler and easier for everybody. But it's just a new technology that only came out a few years ago, and I think you're probably going to get more and more places around the state that are probably going to be using this. We have not yet used electrical cards, but we've got a gas pump system in our village but I know there's another village that has power. There's power also.
Thanks. Other questions?
Sorry to ask further. So I guess two questions. I'm new to this idea. I'm getting the sense that it's not based on a 30-day billing cycle. Is that correct? And then I have another question after that.
No, the folks on prepay never get another bill because they're prepaying, so they don't get billed. But we do keep track of collections each month and then kind of compare that. Every once in a while you look and make sure that somebody has made a payment in the last few months just to make sure everything's working properly. But yeah, there's no more bills. So, and people love it because if you can't pay your electric bill at the end of the month and the utility shuts you off, you have nothing. You have no lights. But if you have a prepaid meter and you're running out of money, you can just like turn everything off but still have something on. You know, you still have a light, you still have power. You're just not going to be able to run the dryer and stuff until you get more money. But that way you never get completely shut off.
So do they get kind of like a warning when they're about ready to use up their prepaid?
It's set by the council what they want the lower limit to be, so usually at about $10 or $20, the thing starts beeping at you to remind you that you're getting low. And you push a button to make it stop annoying you, but you've been warned.
What about in the winter time? What happens when they get shut off?
You can set it if we see a big cold spell coming, because these are installed in some interior communities where it gets below 40 below zero, and these things are only rated to 40 below, and we're always afraid that if you put money, if they run out of money and the contactor opens, that it will be frozen and not be able to shut. So when we see a cold spell coming, we can come into the computer remotely and set it to not disconnect at all, so that even if you run out of money, your lights don't turn off. Now, we don't tell people that, though. I hope nobody's in here. I just blew it. But that way, nobody has to worry about that.
I just kind of wanted to comment that from the old bill, like before you go on to the smart card AMPI system, that their old bill will be added on to that. CIU.
I can comment on that too. That's actually a good point. On the utility end, if the utility also runs water or sewer, or are there other expenses that the household pays for, you can add, or if they have back billing that is delinquent, you can add a percentage to their if you come in with $10 and you buy $10 of power, you can take $1 out of that to put into their delinquent bill. And if you have water or sewer costs, you can also add those in at the utility. And so an example of the village where I'm from, we have I think it's $2 a day that automatically gets deducted from the AMPI system. So you can do more, you can bill for more than just the kilowatt hour on this system. So it makes it very convenient and takes a lot of effort out of the collectors, if you want to call them that. It puts onus on the person in the household to make sure that they've got the money to keep the electricity on. But I guess even of more importance, there was a question earlier about was it a smart metering system or something? That AMPI system tells you how much power. You can go through a series of codes, and it tells you what you're using right now. It tells you what you used in the last hour. It tells you what you used in the last day, the last week, the last month, and your totals. And so, I mean, even for myself, when the AMPI meter was installed, it's a great awareness tool. And I think overall energy consumption in the village, when these things are installed, it goes down because it brings awareness to what you're actually doing in your household and what amenities or what appliances actually burn the most electricity. So it's a win-win, in my opinion.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So in Clark's Point, there's like only 34 people. So in order for us to keep our utilities running, we have to charge a certain amount just to keep the utilities operating. And the first thing that happened when we got on PCE, everybody thought the rates were going to drop, but we said we can't do that, because if we have to have a certain amount of money coming in just to operate the utilities. So I'm sure in maybe a larger community, with more AMPI meters out there and more revenue coming in, that that the rate can go lower. But in a small community, it's got to stay at a certain rate.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Me again. Just wondering so the first question is, where in the house is the AMPI meter installed? Is it in the kitchen or someplace really visible?
Usually it's, so when Connie came in and showed us where to hook them up, you have the meter, a special meter on the outside that talks to the box on the inside of the house, and it can be plugged in anywhere. Usually the closer to the meter on the outside, say if it's in a bedroom right next door, or if you're, you have a wall missing or whatever, you can put your meter out in the living area. So, you could, right where it's visible, and it's better if you can see it. And
The meter has to have a power source, so it's got to be plugged into an outlet, and that's how it communicates to the brain, the box, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so it's just got to be plugged in, and you can kind of have it anywhere in the house that you want, as long as it's got a power supply.
Then the follow-up question is, it looks like there's been some thinking about the rate structure, where if you used a certain amount of energy, then it kicked you into a higher rate structure. And I'm just curious about encouraging cottage industry, or if somebody wanted to have a small business at home that would demand more electricity, is there a different rate structure if you're making something?
Commercial rates would be probably charged to that. The 500 kilowatt hours is a PCE benefit that comes to the rural communities from the state of Alaska. So after 500 kilowatt hours is when that household doesn't receive further PCE benefits. So 500 is your cap on getting reimbursed for PCE. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just thinking, if I'm running a sewing machine, is the theory that I'm making enough extra money that if I blow through the 500 kilowatt hours, then I should be able to pay for that out of the profit of my product, or how do I
Well,
get a
that's where
special-
it is kind of tough. I mean, for small cottage industries in these rural communities where electricity costs so much, is technically, if you're running a business, you're going to pay, well, you can have an agreement, but most likely closer to the full kilowatt hour price. The village where I'm from, it's 90 cents a kilowatt hour, somewhere in that neighborhood right now, maybe a little bit more. And I think the school district gets kind of a cut rate because they're one of the biggest consumers. But that is a challenge when you're talking about running a business in some of these small rural communities. The kilowatt hour commercial rate is going to be pretty high, and you don't get a kilowatt hour reimbursement or benefit, a PCE benefit from the state on that. And there was some discussion on legislation that tried to put that in place at one time, but it didn't make it through. So it doesn't benefit commercial. PC doesn't benefit commercial applications.
On the topic of rate structure and setting rates, there are ways that a utility can look at structuring its rates to encourage more commercial, while taking advantage of the PCE for residential, setting different rates for commercial and residential and so forth. There are different tiers and so forth. And I know Connie's helped a lot of people with, and a lot of communities with rate setting and how to structure that and take best advantage of PCE program, because there are some complications in terms of the eligibility for PCE and different classes of customers and so forth. A lot of utilities don't have a very elaborate rate structure. They just charge the same rate for all customers, and by having something a little more tailored to different classes, there's ways that they can maximize their benefits through that.
Hi, I'm Ray Pfeiffer from village of Healy Lake. We were been talking about these prepaid meters.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the PEC kick in when you have prepaid meters?
It works essentially the same as it would for just a regular billing system, but there's some differences in how the reporting has to work and so forth. Jeff Williams, our PC program manager, would know more about that. But in general, being on prepaid meters versus not doesn't have a huge effect on the PCE eligibility or reimbursement. Is that right, Jeff? Yeah. It just there's ways, like, because of the way the systems work, there's certain things that they have to report to make sure that the PCE program has enough information on what's going on to do the calculations properly. But in terms of eligibility, it's not an issue. Other questions?
Thank you so much for your presentations. I'm curious, who is paying for the AMPI meters going in? Is that state of Alaska or the utilities themselves or other sources of funding? And I'm also just curious if there's a sense of how quickly the AMPI meters pay back, because I know that they're solving some problems of making it difficult to collect. Thank you.
With Clark's Point, I work for Bristol Bay Economic Development, and the funding through them, that's where we got the funding for the AMPI meters.
The village where I'm from, we purchased the AMPI meters, and that is cost of operation, so it's added to the kilowatt hour. And your answer, I guess, on the second part of your question on payoff and collections, I think it probably varies from village to village depending on how they're set up, how many consumers or customers they have, and how delinquent they might be. But it's predictable, and that's one of the things that makes life and doing business a little easier. Is if you have some predictability, and you know that you're going to be getting payments. That's the biggest thing. But payback times, I think the answer to that, it probably varies quite a bit from village to village.
Thank you. My question sort of piggybacks off of her question. In Clark's Point, you mentioned that you had $150 a month flat rate for everyone, and then you mentioned that the population is 34, I take it. Then my question is, did you notice a dramatic reduction in the demand requirements? What effect did this have on the diesel generators that you were using? Because you did also mention the wind turbines and integration issues with those.
Yeah, so we have I think we have two 60 kW John Deeres. We have like a 120 old cat and a 160 cat, and it was really hard for the generators to keep up when it was a $150 flat rate, and because everybody was using electricity, and it was really hard. We were burning lots of fuel, and once we switched over to the prepaid meters, that dropped like we couldn't even use those 60s in the past. But once we went to the prepaid meters, all of a sudden these 60s were perfect. So it dropped substantially. So big difference.
Okay, then that actually answered the question, and installing the prepaid meters actually solved the larger of the two problems, and now your generators tend to be adequately sized for the load requirements for the community.
Yeah,
So
like the larger one, the 160, we try not to even use that anymore because it burns so much fuel. The 120 and the 260s are, the 60s are actually carrying the whole village. And like I said, we're in the future, we've already paid for coastal contractors to come in and do transformers and power lines, replace those. So we have, because of the all the information that we get with the prepaid meters from out of our power, how much usage we're going out of our power plant, we can actually tell exactly how much line loss we got. So once we get our line loss fixed, then it's even going to get better. So that the prepaid meters they not only tell what the residents are using, what the entities are using, the airport, everything. We're even going to put meters on our street lights. We've got LED street lights, and so everything that's being used, we're going to be able to tell exactly how much electricity we're using.
Okay, when you have these prepaid meters, before the PEC kicks in, you charge at the higher rate, and then you give the customer a reimbursement. How do you?
No, with the prepaid meters or without the PCE, the utility charges the customer at the post PCE rate and then gets reimbursed by the state through the PCE program. So it is a reimbursement program, but the credit is being given upfront to the customer. So they're paying the lower rate, and then the utility gets reimbursed. Which means that it's very important for utilities to keep up on their PCE reporting, because if they don't and they're paying out these credits but not getting reimbursed, they can fall very far behind financially, and that can be really difficult to dig out from. And so that's one of the major messages we want to make sure that utilities are aware of, is that you need to keep up with your PCE reporting, because if you're in the PCE program and you're billing or using the prepaid meters and charging the rate that you're supposed to be, there is a backlog there that you need to get reimbursed for by keeping up to date on the reporting. Other questions? Steve?
Yeah, sure. Regarding the timing of the kilowatt hours and the fact that somebody is prepaying, is it built into the payment card or the ampemeter itself that it knows when that 500 kW starts? Is it like the first of the month they automatically say, okay, you're now at 0 kW for this month, and it counts up to 500, and when it hits 500 it knows that it's going to start charging at whatever the full retail price is?
You guys want to take?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's all automatic. People, I mean, you can literally be watching your meter, and at 500 kilowatt hours in that month, you will see your it'll tell you it's now more per kilowatt hour, or you will see the money being consumed a lot faster.
Yeah, and there's some kind of funny stories about that when you first put the meters in, and you get this 500 kilowatt hour credit. Well, you're paying, PCE's subsidizing that first 500 hours, and after that 500 hours was gone, instead of paying a few, it multiplies by 3 or 4 sometimes. I don't know. Instead of paying $5 a day, there's $20 a day coming off your meter, and so there were people that would come up to the utility office shocked, and no, not literally, but. They would come to the utility office with very surprised looks on their faces, wondering why their meters were getting so much credit taken off of them, and that was part of the education piece of it.
I was going to say, it seems one of the biggest success aspects of the ampemeter is that it provides people information.
Yeah.
They can see it, and they may not understand it, but once they hit those thresholds and they ask the questions, all of a sudden they get it, and because they're informed, they can do something about it.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. The one thing I've always regretted about those meters is that it doesn't ring when you hit 500 kilowatts hours in a month, so that you really know. But you can look at that thing and it'll tell you when your rate jumps up. You'll see the difference. But the best thing about those is you're watching your money go backwards. And there is no more powerful motivator on the planet to turn things off. When they talked about those 60 villages wanting to reduce their usage by 15%, I wanted to say, just put prepay meters in. That really, we see it in every village. The load drops by about 25% within a day. And it'll creep back up as people realize they could dry a load of clothes once in a while and not always have to use the clothesline, but they never go back up to that same level. It's always about 10 to 15% less.
You can almost see, or you can almost tell when people are going to come in to buy electricity, because, on larger families, they use more power. So if there's just like a single guy or a man and wife, not so much, but the people with larger families and, are keeping the television on longer, or, they got another freezer, you can almost dictate exactly when they're gonna, well, somebody's, this guy's gonna be coming in soon. So really, you can really tell exactly how much usage people are using. And if you have the older, like the older style heaters, the Toyo stove, Toyo stove are replacing all those now, so just trying to conserve on all energy, more efficient dryers, refrigerators. We're seeing all of that now.
Other questions? Okay, well, thanks everyone. We're finishing up a little early. Lunch will be at noon. It will be served both in the room over here and also in the northern latitudes. So if there's a line at one, then you can go to the other. I have continuing education certificate forms if anyone needs those for architects or engineers to get continuing education credits. And we'll be around. AEA staff, our presenters will be around. If you have further questions, you can come up to them individually. Thanks everyone. I think this was a great conversation.